Hello again, and welcome to our seventh and final capsule in the remote learning series. In this video, we'll talk all things evidence-based, and we'll also provide you with access to some free and ready-made resources. So here are the top 3 questions that we received, and we hope that by the end of this capsule, you'll have found the answers that you're looking for. So the first question relates to social skills. When we think of social skills training, we tend to think of facilitated peer play, or peer play that's mediated by an adult. We think of modeling. We think of a lot of ways that we can support students in the physical classroom and in the physical school in making and initiating, making, and maintaining bonds with peers in their classroom. So if this is a goal on my student's IEP, how am I supposed to develop my students' social skills from behind a screen? We also had a lot of people ask about visuals and how to continue using them in remote learning. Do I send home the visual schedule? Do I take a picture of it? Is one way better than the other? So we'll talk about that. And finally, and this is probably the most important question, is what are the best practices with remote learning and ASD? So are we supposed to be doing different things differently? Is there a different set of guidelines? Given the relevance and importance of this question, we'll start here first. The best way to determine if a particular treatment is effective is to look at the research that's been conducted. There are many different behavioral and educational interventions currently available for students with ASD. But these interventions differ substantially in terms of the quantity of research that was conducted on that intervention, the quality of the research that was conducted, as well as the consistency of the research. And by consistency, we mean, take the example of 100 studies were conducted on intervention X. If 90 or even 100 out of 100 of those studies showed positive results in terms of supporting the student with ASD, then we can feel pretty confident in implementing that resource or that strategy in our classrooms. But if 50 of those studies had positive results and 50 of those studies had no results or even negative results, then we might approach that resource or that strategy with more caution. The National Standards Report by the National Autism Center provides comprehensive information about the level of scientific evidence that exists in support of many of those educational and behavioral treatments that we're used to hearing about. So what they did was they looked at all of the research that was published from 1957 to 2015, and they applied an evaluation rubric to determine the rigor of the scientific method that was used, as well as the results. So what you see here are all of the treatments that they consider to be established based on their analysis. What I'm not showing you is the research on interventions that were considered to be emerging. So it seems promising, but not enough research yet to give it our full approval, and you're not seeing the interventions that are considered to be unestablished. So those that did go through the thorough analysis, and the conclusion was they are not supportive of our students with ASD. And so those are the ones that you're going to want to avoid. But if you're curious to know what they are, then you can definitely go to the National Autism Center's website. The National Standards Report is available as a free download, so you can take a look at it in detail. And what you might be interested to know is that they're coming out with an updated version in early 2021, so you can be on the lookout for that as well. So now that we know what the best practices are, you might still be wondering, well, what are the best practices in remote learning? Like, this doesn't help me, right? And I think when a lot of us think about best practices, we think about color paper, cardboard paper, Velcro, laminating, all of the tangible tools that we're used to seeing in our schools. But Velcro and color printing aren't the best practices. The concept behind those tools is what's important. So while my first Then card might have been printed on color paper, I might have the cutest clip art and the best Velcro, but what's actually important is that my student understands the underlying contingency that I'm using in that tool. And this applies to all of the strategies that are listed here. So what we're going to do next is take a look at the different categories of best practices and how those can be adapted so that they can be used in a remote classroom. So let's start with the visual schedules. Throughout the capsules, we've showed you a couple different visual schedules, but we thought we'd throw in one more so that you can get a better idea of the different schedule templates or the forms that it can take for your students. So here we have Liam's morning schedule. He has the pictograms, and the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that Liam understands what the pictograms mean. Can Liam derive meaning from his pictograms? And this would be true if we were using words. But in this case, we have pictograms. So if Liam is verbal, then we can ask him, what does this pictogram mean? What does this one mean? Does he know that this icon means that he's doing boom cards? Does he know that this icon means that it's snacks? So we just want to verify that he can derive meaning from those pictures. If Liam were pre-verbal or non-verbal, you can test his comprehension receptively. And by that I mean maybe you'd show him a couple different pictures on the screen and you'd ask him to put his cursor over the one that means snack. Put his cursor over the one that means he has a meeting with his teacher. And in that way, we can still make sure that he understands his schedule. We spoke about this in previous capsules, but the visual schedule really is not for us. The visual schedule is for our student. It's to increase our students' predictability throughout the day. It's to reduce their anxiety. We have a general idea of the schedule of what's going to happen during the day. We also have more agency over what happens in our day than our students do. So we really want to make sure that they're understanding the sequence of activities and the expectations throughout the day. What you can also do here, and we spoke about this earlier as well, is hyperlink the activity to the pictogram. So you would do this by clicking Command K, a little box will open, you'll input the website that you want to be associated to that pictogram, and when Liam goes to click on his Zoom icon, it will bring him directly to his Zoom meeting. Same thing for Boom Cards, same thing for Social Express. What you can also do is manipulate the visual schedule, and we'll make all of this available to you in PowerPoint so that if you want to use it or if you want to adapt it, you can do that. But all you have to do is drag the X over the Zoom icon and bring the check mark over to the next activity, and that way Liam would be able to follow along with what's been completed and what's upcoming in his day. If Liam is capable of self-monitoring and doing that manipulation himself, then we'd want to encourage that. So this is it for the visual schedule. If you're looking at this and you're thinking, this is great, but my student might need something a little bit different, or it would be interesting if we had a template that looked like this or like that, please let us know. We're happy to make more schedule templates. There are some that are already available on our website, but you can certainly reach out to us if there's, if there's something that we're missing or if there's something that would be helpful to you, and we would be really happy to create that. Next up, we have some resources that might look very familiar to you, especially if you are watching this capsule and likely have students with ASD in your class or in your grouping. We have the First Then card and a choice board. And again, everything that's on here, it can be manipulated and will be made available in PowerPoint so that you can use it as is or you can adapt it. But what you can do here is have the first then contingency clear to your student in the same way that it is when they have the physical first then board in their classroom. And you can input the image that represents whatever activity is currently happening and then what's going to happen next. And in the PowerPoint version of this, right now we're in presenter mode, so I can't show you, but when it's going to be made available to you on the website in an editable form, you can actually just drag these images over to the then section. So you can have your lesson going on, you can simultaneously split your screen and have your first then card and choice board next to the lesson that's happening so that your student has the same visual representation as they do on their desk, right? So when our students are working at their desk, they probably have their first then card as a reminder on their desk, as well as the lesson, the worksheet, the project, whatever they're doing. And now they can have the exact same thing on their screen, and it can be updated in real time. You can also sub out these images that I put in here. I put them in as an example, but if that's not representative of your students' reinforcers, then switch the pictures. It's as simple as that. You can also copy paste, put in more choices. You can remove some of the choices. It's as easy as that. And once again, if there's something that you're seeing here that isn't quite suitable for your student, or you have ideas of what it could look like for another one of your students and you're wanting support to create that template, then please do reach out to us. We would be happy to provide that. So here we have the I am working for board. And I would actually recommend that you combine this with a choice board. So here I haven't put the choice board up on the slide, but you can certainly do that by copy pasting it. And that way the student can choose what it is they want to work for. And once they've chosen what they want to work for, you or the student can manipulate the tokens over here. So you can drag them down. Once again, it's editable. You can remove some of the tokens that are here. You can add more depending on the level of your student just by using the copy paste feature. And it's as easy as that. Antecedent behavior consequence, or ABC data sheets, are as important in the remote classroom as they were in our physical classrooms. So in the physical classroom, we're probably used to seeing a lot of externalized behaviors. So things like aggression, or maybe being disruptive, or calling out. What you're more likely to see in the remote classroom is internalized behaviors. So maybe being off task or isolating. But these are things that also impede with the learning process and that we want to be tracking so that we can act in a supportive way to our students. So for those of you who might be a little bit less familiar with this form, in the antecedent column, we want to be noting down what happened prior to the behavior occurring. So just immediately before. What were we teaching? What was the demand that was placed, if there was one? So what happened before? When we say behavior, we want to know what that looked like, what was the topography of the behavior, and how long did it last? And then in the consequence column, and let's be clear here, consequence doesn't mean punishment. It means what immediately followed that behavior. So what happened in the environment? What did we say? What did the teacher say? Did a parent intervene? And then we can hypothesize the function of the behavior. And by knowing the function of behavior or the patterns in terms of why that behavior is happening, we can act on facts as opposed to what we infer to be the reason that the behavior is happening. And that's really important. So we'll make a digital copy of this available on our website so you can download it and share it with your paraprofessionals or with the parents so that everybody can be tracking the same information. You can also put it in a shared Google document so that we're all inputting the data in the same place. Comic strip conversations might be something that you're less familiar with, but the idea behind this is that we're trying to promote theory of mind or a student's understanding of what I think versus what other people think. And we do this by using, in this case, I've used clip art animations, but the important part is that we're using thinking bubbles and talking bubbles. And this helps our students understand that sometimes what we think isn't always what we say, and sometimes what we say isn't always what we think. Sometimes what we think isn't what everybody else thinks, and sometimes what we're going to say isn't what everybody else is going to say. This is really complex, but comic strip conversations break it down in a concrete way for our students to visually see what's happening in the minds of others, what's happening in our minds, and how those may be the same, but how it might also be different. Social narratives are an oldie but a goodie. They are reliable. And so social stories at this point can be made on PowerPoint, made on Word. You can download them online. They can be generic. They can be tailored to a specific student. What I really like about using social stories online is that they can be updated in real time. So if the behavior that I'm supporting my student with, or if the social situation that I'm supporting my student with changes slightly, I can update the social story in real time to reflect that change. I can also make my social story interactive. So maybe I share my screen with the student and they have to contribute some ideas to the social narrative. So maybe they're going to input some interventions, or maybe they'll write in how they feel at that given moment. And that way it makes it a little bit more interactive for them, and they feel more engaged in participating in that social narrative experience. Our Center of Excellence has a number of social narratives available ready to go on our website. So you can definitely take a look at those. Your school or school board likely also has a collection of social narratives. I'm sure also all of those are also fine. But if you are taking a look at our center's website and you feel like there's a social story that's missing or that would be really helpful to you, do let us know and we would be happy to create that and to make it available. So this next intervention addresses the question of how do I work on social skills from behind a screen or when my student is isolated in their home without any peers around them. This image is from a program called the Social Express, which we will link on our website so that you can access it. And what I really like about this curriculum is that it uses live video modeling, which we know from the National Standards Report is a best practice, and it's also interactive. So in each webisode displays a different social situation that our students encounter on a regular basis in our schools. So they watch the situation unfold, and at some point in the video, the image stops and the student is given the option to select the social response that's most appropriate. If they select a response that's considered inappropriate, then they watch that situation unfold. They are then brought back to the main menu and they're given a chance to select another response, and hopefully the appropriate response, in which case they'll watch that situation unfold and they get the feedback immediately about what was effective and what wasn't affected. The teacher also gets the feedback on the students' responses and on their performance on that particular capsule. So if it went well, this teacher knows that they can assign the next webisode, and if the student had difficulty with that webisode, then the teacher can provide feedback on that to the student and might consider reassigning it. Now, this isn't a best practice in the traditional sense of that term, but I did want to show you some ways that you can make everyday activities more accessible to some of your students while using active student responding. So here we have a calendar where school days and non-school days, holidays, special days are indicated. So that supports time management. And we also have daily calendar work. And again, everything here, all of these little ovals that surround the different days of the week, months, date are editable. So when you go on the PowerPoint version of this presentation, you can actually move all of those red circles to the side, and the student can, or the teacher can highlight the day of the week, what day it is today, what day it is tomorrow, what's the month, and this is a way of making your everyday activities more engaging. You can also assign this as independent work. So if you've done a lesson on calendar in your group meeting and you want to do a follow-up lesson in asynchronous work to make sure that your student has consolidated the skills that you taught in your group lesson, then you can use something like this. You can have your students submit it to you, and it's a great way of monitoring your students' comprehension of the lesson that was taught. Now this wraps up Capsule 7. So we've looked at some of the best practices. Of course, not everything is there. So if you're missing something, or if you're curious to know more about a specific intervention, feel free to reach out to us. You can also reach out to the consultant that is in your school board or assigned to your online academy for more information. So we really hope that you enjoyed this video capsule series, and we look forward to the next one. Thank you so much.